you started going to church downtown, just with a group of people who had all kind of cognitive impairments, were the marginalized of the marginalized. You started going to prison every Monday night. How has that, what I've noticed from you afar, and I ended up moving away, so some of this may be not true, but what I've witnessed from you from afar has been a coming together of theoretical propositions and let's run this in a laboratory to that's my friend and she can't see and she needs help like going to the grocery store or she can't eat, right? How has that been for you? Because what I feel like is happening, the discourse is this idea of this is the way it should be, this utopian, and then this is just gritty, this way this is the way it's always going to be.
Yeah.
And there's no coming together of, we can hope for something better in traffic in reality, is the way this is. And you've put your money where your mouth is, as few people actually do in the world. So I'd love you to talk about that experience.
Yeah, for me, it was really kind of a spiritual biography. I just found a college campus like an unhealthy place to be. Some of that was professional because I was still caught up in the hero metrics of being successful, publishing.
Teaching evals, publishing.
Yeah, like climbing that. But to your point, I also found like just a disconnect between the things I was writing and the things I was saying about the life of faith and the praxis of it. Like I wasn't doing it. And I just felt I was in a very inauthentic space. And so I felt like I just needed to get out of my social location. All my friends had PhDs. I just needed to get to the kind of margins of my society. So I showed up at a little church worshiping on the economic margins, spending time with people with disabilities, and then starting work out at a prison. And I just really did that to save my own soul in many ways, searching for something, God, I would say.
So can I pause on that for a second? Just double click on it. For the mom who's listening to this, who's kind of got the home that she thought she wanted, or the guy listening to this who's got the job he wanted, there's just, if we're quiet and we turn the phones off, it's often, when our whatever hybrid V8, whatever, it gets quiet at the stoplight.
Right.
There's just that quiet, nagging sense that this isn't it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we stop. We turn the radio back on, and you didn't. What line were you leaning over that said, I gotta go do something?
Yeah. I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
I was with my sons. I was like a parental escort. They were doing a mission trip down in Houston, and one afternoon they were doing a worship service with a community mental health center. So these are people who are like the wreckage of society. Yeah. Just they've washed ashore because of cognitive disabilities or chronic mental health issues. And there I was, psychologist with a PhD, worshiping with a lot of cognitively disabled and mentally ill people. And I remember vividly in that moment, I was looked across the room and there was a woman who raised her arm in the air. I say arm because she had lost her limb. So it was just a stub. She raised a stub in the air.
Yeah.
Praising God. And I remember seeing her, and I was so in my own head. Yeah. I was so caught up in my own self-consciousness, so addicted to being perceived as successful. And I looked across the room at her, and I just had this, it was like a really profound spiritual experience for me where I was like, I look from the exterior as whole. And she looks like she is not whole physically. But on the inside, she is found and I was lost. And I just felt like I just need to figure out what was going on there. What was broken in me, even though like you're talking about that the person listening in who has all the exterior successes but still has that spiritual hollowness.
Yeah.
That sent me on my quest to find kind of the spirituality of the margins. And one of the things you find out on the margins of society is a resiliency. And like I told the story about Kenneth out at the prison, you find this stubborn joy that was lacking in my life. And it was because I was addicted to some game of significance that I was playing, constantly envious of the success of others, constant worried about how I was perceived by others versus a man who was in objectively worse circumstances than I was, yet had a tranquility and a peace that was not in my own life. And it was because of his spiritual framework, the way he saw his life. And he had made this outward turn. And then I needed to kind of follow him on that journey.
And so just I mean, gosh, man. That, and by the way, from afar, that has led me to where I'm at now, which is seeing like, no, you need to go look. And sometimes the people that have the answers, like, they end up, they're wrapped in skin in situations that you don't think so.
Yeah.
They don't look like from the outside. So in reflection, looking back 5-10 years later, how is the esteemed existential or experimental psychologist, head of the center, prolific author, how is your inside different than it was 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm trying to cultivate that inner tranquility, like your, ultimate fighting guy.
Yeah.
By practicing a different kind of way of narrating my life. So I'm really excited to be on the show.
Yeah.
I hope the book does well, but I do a lot of inner work to not attach any sort of anxiety about the metrics of that success. And I've done that with just lots of different things about my life as well. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean the neurotic head games aren't ever present.
Sure.
And I won't watch this interview with a neurotic lens, going how did I do?
Yeah.
That performative aspect of my self-esteem or that image of a successful author or professor, I think is always going to be there. But I keep showing up in those spaces where that game is chastened. I keep spending time with people that I would consider my teachers, unlikely teachers. To be educated by the incarcerated about the secret of joy is an unusual schoolroom, but I find it a healthy place to be. And so I think I've achieved some progress in that, some greater virtue in humility, and in inner peace. But it's a work in progress.
Where I find great value in what you're saying is there is and I'm trying to think of a way to generalize the political landscape right now, is there's a difference of talking about the incarcerated, criminals, immigrants. Like, name your category. There's a humanization. Like, no, that's my friend Kevin. And there's both I think a fear and also a humility and a peace with, my dad used to tell me this back when he was doing homicide work. He'd say the hardest part of being a homicide detective in Houston, Texas was not the gore and the bodies and all that. So the hardest part was sitting across in a 12 by 12 room behind a card table talking to somebody and thinking, oh, but for 3 circumstances, I'm that guy. Because murder isn't a neon sign, but you sit down and have y'all are sharing, pouring water together, and you're talking through what happened, and he goes, "Oh, I would have done the same thing," right? And there's a humanization of that's my friend Kevin, or that's my friend that I worship with, and she's missing an arm. I got this, and this in a food line every Tuesday. That's my friend, right? And there's something powerful about getting behind these labels and talking at and being with, that I just think is transcendent.
Yeah, and that's where I get a lot of hope. I think because of social media and the political discourse, and because we are very online, we lose contact with our local neighborhoods and our communities. And when I try to give recommendations about how to find some peace and some health in a very fraught political context, is just find some local work at a church or a nonprofit, and walk alongside your community. And I've discovered if you talk to those people in the local trenches, that they're pretty hopeful. They get graces because it's face-to-face work, tangible acts of care and compassion. They are not reposting memes on social media to change the world that way. Right. And I think conservatives and liberals also get caught up in that. Yeah. Like try to somehow use Facebook to change the world. Look somebody face to face in your community. I think you'll find stories of hope, and you'll find teachers too. You're going to hear heroic stories of getting through miserable circumstances and still retaining a kind of a joy and a lightness of being that will give you hope. So that's what I tell students to do. Is like get offline, do something local. That's a sustainable work because it's skin on skin, face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and a lot of political distinctions fall away in that local work. Like out at the prison, the chaplains have very different politics, but we're able to have a joyous relationship because we have this shared labor because we care about these men. Yeah. But when you're online, the algorithms silo you. Yeah. And again, that's a virtue that is lost. Like the virtue of civic friendliness is just evaporated. Yeah. And we got to practice it. Yeah.
It goes back to just practice, and I got to decide too. So talk to us about it's something that I remember when I finished my book a couple years ago, I remember sitting with this chapter and I didn't want to hit send. And I got to a point where I thought this is going to be, I will lack integrity if I don't hit send on this, which was this idea of, I don't know how you can be non-anxious, untethered for something bigger than you.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen anyone talk about it, just this frustration I had because I wanted to be cool and hip and appeal to all areas. And it's like, you just wouldn't be honest. All the psychological studies, and I love the way you frame this, bring you right up to the threshold of you have to be anchored into something bigger than you.
Right.
We can just go through a study, we won't do that, but talk to the person who listens to this show, who has no use for faith, who's a kind, generous, in a loving marriage, a great parent, holy atheist, who has no central belief system. With compassion, what do we say to that person?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would do is what I try to do in the book is just point out the obvious to what you're saying. All the research, gratitude, joy, hope, meaning in life, mattering, what's called cosmic significance, you matter no matter what, are all pointing towards transcendence.
Yeah.
And so maybe just let the science unsettle your skepticism a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a scientific person, let the science unsettle you a little bit. Put at least a question mark next to your questions. Sure. Like doubt your doubts a little bit. And I try to do it in the book. I think the second thing I'd say is, if you can't make I believe in God, then I do think, I described in the book, the Dutch have a word called somethingism. I don't know what that is, but it's the ground of being. It's the higher power. It's something bigger than myself. It is whatever I consider true or beautiful or good. And maybe that's not a personal God, but maybe it can be, depending on your religious outlook. Minimally, though, step back and just try to tell a big story about your life. And by big story, I mean, how are you going to judge a beautiful life? When psychologists will sometimes ask people to kind of literally write their eulogies as an intervention. Like what
do you want on there?
What do you want on there? And I think when people do that, they too tend to grab for the true and the beautiful and the good. They're going to, by the good, I mean they're going to look back at that person's life, my life, your life, and say, you know what? They did more good.
Yeah.
Than harm, right? They went gently through the world. Life was easier because they were my parent. Life was easier because they were my boss. Life was easier because they were my friend. They helped carry the pain of the world. Like, who doesn't want that to be, And we also want to look back at a beautiful life, that people look back and go, there was just something about that person that, I don't know, stirred me, motivated me, called me to action. And we all have heroes in our life, or we exemplars close at home in our families or world history, where we kind of say, that's a hero and I want to emulate that. And then something truthful, right? That they were honest about life and the human condition. They that kind of brings us like full circle. They saw clearly, and I think that gets you into, if not a God conversation, a really God adjacent story, where at least you're being pulled out of kind of the metrics of what we'd call the American dream. Get a house, a retirement plan, a little cash in the bank. Just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that can be thin and shallow.
Yeah. There's a bigger story you're
Exactly.
part of. Yeah. All right, I want to wrap with this. I put this interaction probably in the top 5, like besides getting married and having kids, probably the top 5 most important interactions of my life was with you. I don't even know if you remember it. I came and saw you one day, and there was something that happened with a student, and I wasn't cool with it, and I explained it all to you. And I know enough about emotionally charged memories that they're not always super accurate, but this is how it is in my head. That in some shape, form, or fashion, as I was submitting myself to you as a spiritual mentor, saying, I don't know what to do, man. And I remember you said, hey, what's happening to this student's not right. And you're free to go. Like, if you can't be here, if you need to go get another job, if you need to move your family, you're good.
Yeah.
And then you said something, I remember cursing you so bad. You said, but I want you to remember, when you leave, when you walk out that door, that student will still be here. And the rest of them will still be here. And if everybody leaves, and I remember being haunted by that, and yet that has shaped every professional interaction and many of my personal interactions since, where I've almost pathologically tried to find places where this is going to be hard, but this is going to be if everybody leaves, everybody runs, if everyone hides. What do you tell the person who is thinking that everything's going to be simpler and easier, or I'll show you by cutting these people off, or I'll show you by I'm not talking to them anymore?
I remember that conversation.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do remember that conversation. Can I talk about Jesus' parables?
You can talk about whatever you want to, man.
Like 2 parables of his that haunt me is like the parable of the wheat and the tares, how the weeds and the wheat kind of grow side by side, and the parable of the leaven. And I think that's like just really good descriptions of like where the kingdom of God shows up. It's ambiguous. It's. I think some of us want to achieve a kind of a pure place, and then we find ourselves in these complicit institutions, or we find ourselves in a corporate situation that seems morally ambiguous, or.
And nowadays we know what our boss's boss, how they vote, right? And so it's like, I can't.
Yeah. And so we're always looking for like a pure place to stand. And so we extract and remove and try to find that. But I think it's going to be ambiguous. It's always going to be wheat and tares. It's always going to be leavening. And if you sucked out all the kindness and all the compassion from an institution or the world, then what sort of hell is left behind? And so I think that idea of being a leavening presence wherever you're at, that this we all have power and we all have influence, from a parent over a child, from coworkers in a hierarchy, to people who have social capital and influence. And the question is like, do you make the space? Do you leaven the space around you? Is it more humane? Is it more compassionate? Is it more kind? Is it more gentle? Jan and I think she got this from Oprah or Instagram, and it could have been both.
Yeah,
but
same.
But it's a phrase we say to each other a lot, which is, who flourishes because you have power. You can't extract yourself from complicit systems, but you can say, given that system that I'm in, given what levers I can pull, like you were a dean of students, given what levers I can pull, can I make this place more humane, more gentle, less harmful, And so I kind of just see life is constantly about gardening. You're just always kind of gardening the plot of ground that you currently have. Now, that's not to say for prophetic reasons or justice reasons, if you look at a system that is so corrupt that you just got to...
I got to get out.
There are moments like that.
Yeah, sure.
And And you were kind of deciding that at the time.
Well, dude, thanks for coming. Thanks for being my friend all these years. And like being when things got real dark, for being a pin light for me out there. I appreciate that.
Oh,
it's been a blessing, man.
Our friendship's been a blessing for me as well. So happy to be with you.
You're awesome, man.
So are you.